to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
So training camp is here.
It's true.
And it is time for us to start talking about what this projected 53-man roster is going to look like. And we have some ideas of what it's going to look like. We have been trying to channel our inner Kyle Shanahan, our inner John Lynch, and get this 53-man right. Of course, this isn't the final 53. This is heading into camp. This is a projection. But we're going to go over this, and there are some heavy-hitting things coming up.
You can see it. It says pre-training camp.
Yes.
This isn't Project 53. This
No,
is pre-training camp.
Project 53 comes right before the 53-man roster is set, and that'll be our
glorious.
final 53.
Yeah, it's our final 53 before they set it. It's not a recap of us talking. It's our final prediction, so you can see how right we were.
Yeah, or wrong.
Hopefully not wrong.
Hopefully right. Yes.
Hopefully right.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that this year, the pre-training camp 53 is close to what Project 53 is going to be.
Could be.
It's tough to say, but we feel like we got our finger on the pulse of this roster at this point in time. Training camp can change that. Preseason games can change that. So we'll have to see what happens. But before we get too far into this, make sure you hit that like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. But Ant, let's get into this and let's start on the offensive side of the football and specifically the leaders of that offensive side of the football, the quarterback room.
Yeah, you don't want to click off this at any point because we have some heavy hitting decisions, and it starts right off the back because in a shocking development, we're keeping Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance.
And that's it.
That is 100% it. We are not keeping another quarterback. We're going to. We have the feeling that Kyle Shanahan's belief is that we will add one of these guys to the practice squad, Rosen or Sudfeld. But if we get past these two guys, we suck again. So we're going to roll with these two guys, and we're going to keep a nice group of people around them.
100%. That is exactly kind of where our thought process is and where our heads are at with that quarterback room. And from there, that allows some potential opportunities to keep some other players at some other positions. And we got a little bit of maybe not a debate, but a tough decision coming up.
We do.
But we'll jump over to the running back room next, and we'll talk specifically about 5 guys. We'll start with 5, and there may be another guy that we add on there as well. And the first guy is going to be Raheem Mostert, obviously. And then Trey Sermon, not too long and not too far after that, and it could be inverse for all we know.
Yeah.
Elijah Mitchell and Wayne Gallman are the next 2 guys on the board and the names there. And then last but certainly not least, Kyle Juszczyk, who is definitely one of the better guys in this room, but again, counts as a running back, as a fullback because reasons and stuff and things. But that's a very solid group right there.
It is.
You'll notice a name that's off there is JaMycal Hasty at this point in time, but that's because we're still maybe debating a little bit on whether or not Hasty could make it.
Yeah, with our quarterbacks only being at 2, we have a bubble position. So we're going to talk about 2 players eventually that we have on that bubble. JaMycal Hasty is one of them, but we can't talk about it yet because we have other positions to go through. Once those 2 bubble players are revealed, then we'll have a nice little conversation about it.
Very, very accurate indeed. And next we'll go to the tight end position. And this one I think there's probably less debate on. I think you and I both feel that this is probably going to be the 3 unless something crazy happens.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be George Kittle, of course, Ross Dwelley, and then me and you both believe that Charlie Warner is going to beat out Mike Cole Pruitt. And they're going to go 3 tight ends this year instead of 4 like they did last year because there's no Jordan Reed. If there was a Jordan Reed, we'd be talking 4 tight ends because of the skill set that he has, and then Charlie Warner being a blocking guy. It would make sense. This year, it's only 3, and the 49ers leave flexibility at other positions.
Very well true, and one of those positions where they leave flexibility at is the wide receiver room.
They do.
And this is the other room where we have that bubble guy who they could go either way with. They could go with Hasty, they could go with this guy at the end. But we'll start with the names that we already know and that everyone's familiar with, right? Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Hurd, Mohamed Sanu, Travis Benjamin. Those guys are safe. We feel are safer to make the roster.
Yeah.
And then after that, we got a name that might surprise some folks in Juwan Jennings.
Yeah, we went Juwan Jennings as a 6th wide receiver, beating out Richie James. And that might shock a lot of people. We think actually, we've talked about the battle being Benjamin versus James. They also have brought in another return guy, which means Richie James' job is not secure. They're looking at all angles and aspects of how they're building this roster. And we think Richie James might possibly be on the outside looking in. You like the flexibility you can use with Jawan Jennings as far as a red zone threat, a big physical guy that can take over for that Kendrick Bourne style of role. They have definitely translated the way that they want to play, and physicality is one of those ways.
100%. But because we've only kept 2 quarterbacks, that leaves that extra slot that we originally had kind of cut James out of. It kind of opens it back up. So now the question becomes, between the two of these guys, between JaMychal Hasty, between Richie James, is there which one is there actually room for? Because Hasty adds another dynamic to the backfield. He can also add some special team stuff as well in there. But Richie James adds the return aspect and a speed weapon on the outside at receiver who can do a lot of different things and has shown flashes of big potential in San Francisco. Ant, where do you lean on this?
This one's a hard decision because with the Rams having the injuries at running back, you don't want to try to get JaMychal Hasty to the practice squad. They could claim him, pick him up. Seattle would definitely do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you could lose him. With Richie James, you would 100% lose him. He's not making it to the practice squad either. So you're going to lose one of these guys. You have to determine which guy you'd rather lose. I think the way I'm going to lean on this is that they would keep Richie James for this reason. They have Wilson that's going to start on the PUP list. He's going to come back somewhere during the year, and that's when Hasty would ultimately be gone. So you just got to make the decision now. You can't have that loaded of a running back room with Wilson trying to come in later in the season. You go ahead and make that move, keep Richie, and make sure he doesn't end up in Seattle or one of these other teams where he can hurt you.
Well, not just that too, but I think if they're of the two guys, the one who has the more likely chance of making it to a practice squad is JaMychal Hasty.
That is true.
Because teams could still look at what he did last year and maybe think he doesn't fit necessarily in their run scheme and in their system. Seattle's been more of a downhill running type of team, not Hasty's strength. The Rams, we talked with Tyler Menting about this, have been trying to establish that downhill vertical type run game and haven't been able to do it. JaMychal Hasty doesn't really fit that. Now, he has a body who's got game experience in the NFL and has looked solid. So he does have the opportunity to make it, but it's it's more likely that Richie James gets picked up than it is JaMychal Hasty getting picked up.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's why you keep James, because you know he's going to end up somewhere else. Hasty has the opportunity to slide because you still don't know what other guys are going to get cut from other teams.
True.
And if a bigger name gets cut from somewhere or ends up not making a roster, JaMychal Hasty may become an afterthought for some teams, and he could sneak his way down into that practice squad.
And the 49ers could keep him protected.
Also true.
Which you know they will.
Yeah, I wouldn't want him going anywhere else, especially in the NFC West, in which running backs are a necessity.
Yeah, definitely not. I don't want to see that at all.
Please no. Please no. Last but not least, on the offensive side of the football, the most important aspect, which is the line, because the line lets everything else, especially in this 49ers offense, function. Alex Mack, obviously safe, obviously protected. Laken Tomlinson, Daniel Brunskill, Aaron Banks, obvious. McGlinchey, Trent Williams, all of these guys solidified for sure. You know those 6 with certainty, 100% certainty, barring injury, are going to be on this roster.
Yes.
And now the conversation starts, because what else comes after that, you don't know. Swing tackle, both you and I feel Colton McKivitz is going to have the edge up there, and most likely he's going to be that swing tackle at spot 7. Spot 8, 9 after that, Jalen Moore.
Has to be, yeah.
Has to be, right? Sean Coleman.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where the interesting, conversation happens, is who's going to be that 9th guy who you want to keep, because you're, able to have that 9th guy. So you want to make sure you have him out there. Because if you keep the 9th guy, you're allowed to have 55 guys, instead of 53.
Sure.
So you got to do it.
Well, and they also still have the pasta man Alfredo Gutierrez, who they get to keep no matter what.
Yeah, he's not going to play a single snap in the regular season. So pasta man, I'm not considering. Dakota Shepley is another guy, that we could bring up and talk about. And they've got some other guys too. I just think Coleman would make the most sense. I think Skewell's injury opened the door for Coleman to make this roster. And why wouldn't you want a veteran with that kind of experience that can play tackle? You already have McKivitz, Brunskill, and Jalen Moore that can play guard and tackle. And
Correct.
Brunskill can actually play center too. So you don't need another center. So adios, Tom Compton. And Tom Compton's not a bad player. It's just now the way they've built this offensive line, he just doesn't meet the standard of the rest of the guys.
No, and especially when you got 3 guys who can all play guard,
Yeah.
it makes sense to make sure that you have another guy who can play tackle.
Yeah.
Because, God forbid something happens to both tackles. If you'd be rolling with Jalen Moore, the rookie, having to throw him out there at tackle, and that's a little bit of a scary thought process.
Well, unless you're a Brunskill out at tackle and McKivitz out at tackle.
You could, but there's also the aspect there with with Brunskill that he's a little bit, maybe not the physical dominant presence guy. I don't think he would struggle in the run game, but he may struggle in the pass game. A guy like Sean Coleman, who's a little bit bigger body, I don't think he's going to struggle as much in the pass game.
Yeah, you're right. He might not. I still think Brunskill's a better player.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. But I think though that matchup and that grouping together, those 9 guys constitute the best offensive line the 49ers can put out there. And Skule made that possible. If Skule doesn't get hurt, then Skule is battling and one of these guys is off. But I think all these guys end up making the team, and that's the 9 guys they keep on the offensive line.
Yep, and that's the offense for you. That's the breakdown there offensively for this pre-training camp 53-man roster. And now we get to this defense. And again, some maybe not shocking names, but some shocking keeps and some shocking let-goes in terms of guys and numbers that we keep at certain positions. We start with the most important part and the most important aspect of this defense, which is that front 4 behind the linebackers, of course. The front 7 is the most important, but you got to start at the front and work your way back. That front 4 there's a lot of names on that list. There's Bosa, there's Armstead. You're going to keep D Ford, and it looks like, according to Fred Warner, we got the return of potentially a healthy D Ford.
He's back.
That's scary for the rest of the league. It's scary for the NFC West. Kyler Murray crying right now. Matthew Stafford wondering why he decided to come into the NFC West to play against this team twice a year.
Fear the double nickel.
You should. You 100% should. All right, Samson Ebukam after that. Arden Key as well. Then you get to the interior aspect. Javon Kinlaw, Kevin Givens, Maurice Hurst, DJ Jones, Zach Kerr. Those guys are there. Those 10. That is a solid 10. It's a scary 10. And it's a 10 that, if healthy all season long and a healthy D Ford returning, good God almighty.
Yeah.
NFC West O-lines are going to be sweating.
That was the 10 you had to pick, and those 10 stood out. You got Jordan Willis suspended, so that's we're saying goodbye to Kentavious Street. There's just no way he can make this roster with the guys that are ahead of him.
Nope.
He's an injury away from being on this roster, though, because he has flexibility to play inside and outside. So he's still there, but Darion Daniels, practice squad again. He can't crack it. Now with Kerr being back, DJ Jones being back, with Givens and Hurst and those guys on the interior, he just doesn't make the cut. So that's how this defense
And there's too
looks.
much flexibility, too, like you talked about. Armstead being able to slide and move inside. It just becomes too difficult, and there's just not enough opportunities for him to make the field for it to make sense to keep those kind of guys around.
Yeah, especially with Ebubom out there, too.
Ebubom is going to be a freaking nightmare.
Yeah.
This is going to be great.
This defensive line is stout. It's going to be fun to watch. And once again, a great mixture of how it's constituted between interior and guys on the outside that play the edge.
And hybrid guys.
It is, and hybrid guys that can really, that turbo pass rush type situation. They used to have the NASCAR pass rushes with the New York Giants. This is two extremes because these guys are faster and have quicker first steps.
Is this Formula
Formula
Was that what we got in the front 4 here? Is Formula
Yeah.
I like that. That's
shake and bake, baby.
Shake and bake. Yeah, I love it. I love it indeed. Then we move to the linebacking core, and this is where it doesn't get dicey, but it gets interesting because we're keeping 4, folks.
Yeah, we're pulling the trigger on this.
4 linebackers. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shaair, and Demetrius Flanagan-Foles.
Yep.
4 names.
That's the core, right? That has been the core group. All 4 of them were on the roster last year.
It's true.
Cutting Nathan Jerry, I think, is what opened the door for this to be a possibility. It kind of signaled that maybe this was the trend. Maybe this is where they're going. Could somebody else, could Burgess step up and take that 5th job? Could. Maybe. But because of something that we see coming down the line, we'll fill in this roster spot eventually. So right now, these 4 guys make the most sense. And once again, your defense is in a world of hurt if you don't have Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. So if you get to the point where those 2 guys aren't playing, we suck again.
We suck again. And we may be seeing even more creative dynamic packages. And there definitely could be a name out there that they bring in or go after and target. So we'll have to see, kind of wait and see with that.
Yeah.
If the linebacking room stays healthy, the front 4 stay healthy, this team, just that, is formidable because you can throw, as long as they're not a dumpster fire named Brian Allen out there, you're going to be just fine, and because they're going to be able to create a lot of havoc up front, slowing down run games, creating pass pressure, and forcing quarterbacks to make errant throws. You just need a guy out there who knows where he's supposed to be and can be in the right spots most of the time. They don't even necessarily have to play great. They can just play solid. And then we move into our secondary. And again, nothing crazy here. I wouldn't say anything that's surprising or a little nuts. Maybe some veteran names that maybe you would think have a better opportunity, and some guys that this was a tough one for me because I love the 2 guys that we left off the list. but it just doesn't make sense with the talent at other positions. Jason Verrett obviously making this roster. Emmanuel Mosley obviously making this roster. Shark, K'Wan Williams obviously making this roster. And then we're going and sticking with the two young guys, Ambry Thomas and Diamador Lenore. Those 5 in total, make the roster, and you're moving and parting with Dante Johnson and Tim Harris Jr., which was a very difficult decision for me to wrap my head around because I like Tim Harris so much. I like Dante Johnson's flexibility. I think it's just time for the young guys to come in. Tim Harris has had his opportunity. He's been hurt. He's been dinged up. Dante Johnson has had his chances, and they haven't really separated themselves. And I think this training camp, you're going to see the two young men, Diamador Lenore and Ambry Thomas, being able to separate themselves from these vet guys.
Well, and what you found was the mixture, right? That's what you're trying to do when you're constituting this roster. You're trying to find a mixture of guys that can play all over the place. Verrett and Mosley are your day one starters, but also have the flexibility to play outside and inside. Ambry Thomas is somebody they see as a eventual starter on the outside, so he's not going anywhere. K'Wan Williams is your staple in the nickel, and then Diamador Lenore is probably his eventual replacement there. You're definitely not going to move on from him. Plus, you get Tim Harris and you get Dante Johnson. Both of them could end up on the practice squad, one or both, and both of them have flexibility to be able to come out there and play. Tim Harris has been on the practice squad. Dante Johnson has started on the practice squad before. Both could do that. Not a great chance they'll be claimed by other teams, so the 49ers can definitely do this. This isn't a room I'm worried about cutting someone and losing them. If they cut one of those rookies, they would 100% lose them. That's not happening anyways. They're high on these guys.
Yeah, and they should be high on them.
Yeah.
And then we move over to the safety position, right? And this is where it starts to get interesting because we're going to keep 5.
Yes.
You heard us correctly. We're keeping 5. Mm-hmm. At the free safety spot, you're going to keep Jimmy Ward and you're going to keep Tavon Wilson. Mm-hmm. Those two names make sense. Again, Jimmy Ward, it's his job. We don't think Tavon Wilson is going to supplant him or usurp him in that role, but he's definitely a more reliable backup option in case something happens to Jimmy Ward. And in case something goes awry, you can also find a way to creatively use him in certain nickel and dime situations.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you could also think about Tavon Wilson playing on the special teams as well. Contributing there. Tony Jefferson could also play some free safety area in spots, but when you're looking at it, those two guys as the free safeties make a lot of sense. And then when you go over to the strong safety spot, you've got Tart, Jefferson, who are in the battle for the starting job.
Absolutely.
So they're both definitely making the roster because we 100% believe that they are great players and fits in this team. And then you've got Talanoa Hufanga. And Talanoa Hufanga, they just drafted with the 5th round pick. They use terms like, he reminds me of John Lynch. When you say you remind me of John Lynch, you're not getting cut. You're not ending up anywhere. You're playing in San Francisco. He's going to be a special teams ace.
Yes.
So they're definitely going to hold on to him. And that's why we had the open spot with the linebackers, because we believe Talanoa Hufanga will fill a hybrid-style role in this defense, and they will use him around the box. And he will take up this, that roster spot that we made, free and clear by having less linebackers.
And the best part, we didn't have to give up 2 first-round picks in order to have this safety playing in the box and maybe at times playing defensive end.
Yeah, he's going to become he's not going to be like Jamal Adams and be the highest paid defensive end in the league when he gets that deal. No, you're right. Talanoa Hufanga is a similar style of player. The one thing is he's almost the same size as Flanagan Foles, or is the same size as Flanagan Foles right now.
That's crazy.
So it's not like he's undersized to play that position. There is a transition to go from safety to linebacker.
100%.
Everything as far as the reads are different because you're in a condensed box. When you're farther back, you're able to read it at a different angle.
And you have more time.
And you have more clarity, right? You can see the holes and everything, so it's a little bit different. But he did play in the box so much in college that he is adept with that. He can do it. And I think that also him against the screens that the Rams, the Cardinals like to run, he blows that stuff up. So he makes a lot of sense to be in that position.
And I don't worry about him as a tackler and a hitter. I think those are his strengths as a player right now. This is a guy who brings the wood. He hits hard. He's very, very solid in terms of wrapping up and bringing guys down. Again, tackling at the NFL level, very different than tackling at the college football level. But if it translates, this guy won't have any issues and won't have any problems in the box going up against running backs no matter the size. Because he hits hard. He brings wood. He's not afraid to get down and dirty.
Yeah, and when you're looking at the way that we constituted the defense, it makes the most sense flexibility-wise and also keeping the talent that you needed to keep. So when the 49ers are building these rosters, they're going to look at it from that perspective. It's like, oh, we need this guy, and these guys add these things. So the way that it's constituted, there was hard decisions, right? Not being able to keep Contavious Street was a little bit difficult.
That was tough.
Not being able to keep 5 linebackers. I think the Nathan Jerry thing opened that up and made signal to us that the real battle is Talanoa Hufanga versus Marcel Harris. But having so much love for the Talanoa Hufanga coming out of the draft, I don't think the 49ers are going to move off this guy. They think he could develop into something eventually down the road. Eventual replacement at the strong safety position, maybe.
100%. And like, don't get it twisted, right? Some of these positions, we kind of blew through and made it seem like it was really simple. O-line, you may be thinking, oh, they went with their 7, 8 guys they've been talking about. Don't get me wrong. Parting ways with Tom Compton isn't easy. He's not a bad player.
No.
This is a guy who has a lot of experience and starting experience in this league. It just doesn't make sense to have a guy who's so pigeonholed in the box when you have so many guys who could play that spot potentially and play in other places. We don't think there's a huge drop-off or difference between a Colton McKivitz and a Tom Compton at that guard position, but Colton McKivitz does more for you. He can play tackle. He can play guard at a high level. All of those things we've seen from Colton McKivitz. Tom Compton is just going to be a guy who can play guard.
Yeah, and Tom Compton might end up on the practice squad.
He could.
I think the one guy to watch that we have off this roster is Dakota Shepley.
That is.
He's the one guy that you have to keep an eye on through training camp and just see how he handles it. If there's an injury, he's going to pounce on it. But if there's not, I don't see a way for him to unseat these guys that we talked about.
Linebacker spot 2, Jonas Griffith, the big-bodied kind of linebacker. Jonas. He very well could sneak on, especially if Talanoa Hufanga is getting reps at that linebacker spot, and maybe it's not panning out the way they want it to. There'll be some tougher decisions to make at that point, because then if you are going to hold on to a Talanoa Hufanga and add a Jonas Griffith, someone in that safety room is going to have to go.
Yeah, and that could be in the end of Tavon Wilson, and then all of a sudden you've got Jefferson playing some free safety.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are definitely possibilities and ways that this thing can shake out. Preseason and training camp is going to give us a bird's eye view of how this is actually going to constitute and be built. This is what it looks like right now, but that could drastically change. You don't know what's going to happen reps-wise, happen in these games, who's going to show out, and also, unfortunately, injuries, people getting nicked up, and then all of a sudden you shuffle the deck. But in a perfect world, this is how you try to build the team.
Mm-hmm. And this is the way that we broke it down that makes the most sense on just based on what Kyle Shanahan has done in the past, what this team is starting to transition to and becoming, and the talent that John Lynch, Parag, this front office has brought in. There's definitely a plan in place for how they want this roster to look. We think this is kind of how it may play out, but you're just going to have to wait and see. Let us know what you think about this pre-training camp 53-man roster down below in the comment section. Did we hit a home run on this, knock it out of the park? Or did we completely botch this thing up? They're keeping 3 quarterbacks, right? Richie James is for sure making this roster. Mohamed Sanu and Jalen Hurd. Hurd's going to sprain an ankle in week 1 of the preseason and never play another down in the NFL. We want to hear from you, whatever your reaction is. Positive, negative, doesn't matter. Let us know about it down there. Let's have a conversation on this. And while you're commenting away, don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already and hit that notification bell. And share the content with the rest of the faithful.
Yeah, put it out there. Let everyone know what this 53-man roster could look like. And then leave a comment and just let us know how you think it will look like. We're here for all of it. We want to hear it. And we want to hear your point of view. So make sure you do that. It's a lot of fun.
Tons of fun. Training camp, it's here. It's now here, folks. It's right around the corner. It's literally happening before our very eyes. I cannot wait to see how all of this shakes out and how accurate we end up being with this pre-training camp roster breakdown. But that's another time. We got to be patient, let this thing play out. And until next time, 49ers fans, you stay safe.
Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.